I want to share with you an article called A Chat with Thomas A. Edison. I do not have an exact date on this piece. It was done in the 1920s, and it appeared in the magazine The Moving Picture World. And it's an interesting piece of American history. And the article begins, Thomas A. Edison is a plain, happy, old-fashioned American. He is the first and foremost, and then the most remarkable and surprising addition. He is likewise one of the greatest inventors of his age, ranking near the top among the benefactors of mankind. In appearance, manner, and language, he reminds you of the best type of the great Middle West, of a prosperous, philosophical farmer, or the shrewd and kindly president of a rural bank. He is hearty, hospitable, and wholesome. If his great fame, as told in the encyclopedias and in the daily lives of our civilization, have awed you into hesitation and dissidence, be sure that the old gentleman's neighborly greeting will put you at ease like a touch of magic. I had gone out to Orange to interview the great man in his world-famous laboratory. Edison roams about the vast plant just as he pleases here and there and everywhere. I will try and find him for you, said his secretary, and immediately went in search of him. Now this gave me a chance to look about and examine the office, or rather the chief den of the inventor. It was an ideal inventor's retreat. It differed from an editor's sanctum in the evidence of care and order. There was an ambiance of light and air, and the ceiling seemed more than 20 feet high. Models and books and tokens of appreciation stood neatly arranged and distributed on shelves and on tables. And there was a touch of elegance in the furnishings, solid comfort, and a dash of art. In less than 10 minutes, the secretary came back with Mr. Edison. A few moments later, the great inventor was sitting in a rocking chair between his office desk and a long, flat table ready to talk. There's a boyish exuberance about Edison. His laugh is boisterous. A rare kindliness of soul irradiates his features. He suggests strength, character, and the love and power to think. He is a big, deep-chested man with the head of an intellectual titan. Withal, he is as simple as a child, and just as discreet and ingenious. The conversation somehow started with the topic of food. It is a favorite topic with Edison. I eat less than a handful every day, and I thrive on it. We eat too much, which makes so many of us fatter than we ought to be. Edison then responded quickly to the question of his interest in motion pictures. Well, he said with a quizzical smile, that is getting to be quite a business now. I tell you, whatever you do for the proletariat pays. I am not done working for the proletariat. I am now engaged on an invention which will give cheap opera to all the people. I am going to make the man that works in the ditch for $2 a day enjoy the things which Louis X could have not bought. Yes, finer things than the French king ever saw or heard. Now you want me to say something about the early history of the motion picture as I saw it. I have often wanted to find out who was the first man that put the pictures on the screen as a commercial proposition, but I have never actually been able to do it. I think, though, it was somebody in New York, somebody that ran an arcade and fitted up a special room for the showing of the pictures, charging an extra price for admission. We certainly had a lot of trouble before we came near hitting the right thing. First, we had to have the proper kind of a cylinder. Then we made a tape perforated on the edges. The first lengths were about 50 or 100 feet. It was hard to get sensitized emulsion and a film that would not break. Then we came to the fight with the pirates. That always, as a matter of course. We had to fight them in the courts, and our expenses were enormous. Well, I'm not so anxious to make money, I only wanted to break even. Smiles played about the corners of his mobile mouth as he grew more and more reminiscent. Yes, I have to smile when I think of our first studio, he commented. Our first studio and office was movable. It was carried on pivots and we moved it around in the open, changing with the position of the sun because you know the sun would insist on changing. The studio looked for all the world like a black Mariah. It was about 25 by 20 feet in size. There was no glass on top to the top of it. Now in those days, there was no flicker. I took 40 pictures to the second, but when it came down to commercial work, the speed was cut down, as you know, and they made it 16 pictures to the second, as much as the public will stand, I suppose. There ought to be no trouble about getting absolutely steady pictures if they are willing to pay for them. It's purely a commercial question. Well, when this new business got underway, a lot of our enterprising Hebrew citizens jumped on board. They were quick to see its coming possibilities. It has taken from 7 to 8 years to make room for the pictures. It takes that long to make room for the best thing ever invented. If you were to invent something tomorrow, something that everybody needs, it would still take about 7 years to introduce it and make room for it. I know from the incandescent light. I guess I was about 13 years in properly introducing the phonograph. You want me to say something more about the early days? Well, at first we used to turn out films of an average length of about 200 feet, and the subjects were all scenic. The idea to utilize the invention for the purpose of the drama came much later. No, we never had any trouble getting actors. The Rialto was not far away. We were always careful about the subjects and avoided things that are popular in the Latin countries. That's why in the beginning we did very little business with the Latin countries. We sold the film in those days and got about 15 cents per foot. To tell you the truth, I lost money on the transaction because our lawyers' bills were really so heavy. Renters of films in the early days were always after us for more material. We could not turn out the stuff fast enough. Well, I never paid so much attention to the business end of it anyways. The technical end kept me busy, but there was not much business system taken then, that I do remember very well anyways. When the other interests came in, business grew a good deal. Some of the fellows that kept a sort of Peeping Tom show came in too, and they all have made a lot of money. Well, I'm glad of it. Mr. Edison was manifestly pleased with the effect of the motion picture on the saloons. I hope, he said, that someday the outdoor places will seat 2,000 or 3,000 people, and that the price will be cut to 3 cents. I want to give the very poor people a chance to learn and to be amused. I hope there will be 40 or 50 such places right around New York, and that will cut off about 100,000 visitors to the gin places. Yes, that would knock the whiskey trade pretty hard. If private enterprise won't do it, the municipalities ought to take hold of it. Let me put down the price a little lower, say 2 cents, and I will put a crepe on the doors of all the saloons. The great inventor expressed his disapproval of the so-called white slave and drug terror films and went with great enthusiasm into the work he said was now engrossing his attention, the perfection of a disc for the reproduction of music. He took the interviewer up to the trial room, and he had some popular as well as classical music run off on the new invention. There was a complete absence of the harsh and grating sound we associate with an artificial reproduction of music. Each instrument and each voice retained its original richness and purity. It was a rare treat, which the inventor enjoyed with all the zest of a true music lover. I just love music, said Edison. His face lit up with childlike pleasure. We returned to the great American's office and chatted a little longer. Edison inquired how the moving picture world was getting along, and as he shook hands with me, he said in parting, well, I will say, the world is fair. As one of the biggest men which the world has ever produced, Thomas A. Edison, his accomplishments and personal characteristics provides an interesting subject of discussion everywhere. Not long ago, a prominent magazine writer who had had occasion to interview the Wizard of the Oranges on numerous occasions said, "One of the marked characteristics of Mr. Edison is his absolute democracy. He is one of the most human men I have ever met and most approachable big man with whom I've ever come in contact. He is always willing to chat, and when I say chat, I mean to talk with men whose conversation will not burden him with the technical details of his work in which one might reasonably expect him to be engrossed. A good story is the open sesame of his heart, and he himself is one of the most entertaining storytellers to whom I've ever listened. It is notably true that his winning system of living has always called for the leavening of his many life with periods of wholesome playtime." And that ends the article that was in the Moving Picture World. And I want to say one thing in conclusion. Well, knowing me, it'll probably be 2 or 3. But I have a son, I think, who lives out in Utah. And we don't talk anymore, which is fine, because no matter what I say, no matter what I do, he is always argumentative to it. He wants to argue everything. Everything I stand for is wrong. And I got sick of it. So I cut off communication. The thing is, though, he hates everything of the past that has been good. Thomas Edison made our lives better. The light bulb, the phonograph, the motion picture, to name just a few. But he thinks he was a horrible person who took advantage of those around him. He feels the same about Henry Ford. And Henry Ford was a great man who did a great deal for us, the country and the world. And then even on a smaller level, which isn't very small, if you go down to Detroit and you see the Henry Ford hospitals, you can still see that today the man's influence still very much attempts to change our world for a better place. I won't even get into his hateful debacle about President Franklin Roosevelt, because he has no respect for anything that is decent and good. Well, anyways, I told you it would end up being 2 or 3 things instead of 1. All right. Thanks for stopping by. If you haven't done so, please subscribe. Take this as a personal invitation from me to subscribe, because it is. Please give me a thumbs up. And God bless y'all and have a great day. Bye-bye.